Good afternoon, everybody. We want to welcome you to a Jenkins Institute webinar. Dale, how are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful, Jeff. It's kind of nice to be warm.
Are you warm?
Well,
I don't feel very warm right now.
for the first time in quite a while, it seems like. You and I, let's tell a little bit about where we are and what we're doing up here.
Sure, Dale. We are both in Detroit, Michigan. We came up here for a couple of reasons. We came up here, one, to preach on Sunday for the Southside Church in Grand Rapids and to meet with the leaders there about looking for a preacher. We had a great meeting and a great day, and the church had a wonderful day. They had a baptism that day and welcomed a new wonderful young lady and her daughter into the congregation there. So that was a great day. So that's one of the reasons we came up here.
Yes, and you and I decided a while back that we would take a few days every year and work a while, but plan some things for upcoming events and stuff like that. And we probably do it in conjunction with, having some time with some other preachers in an area and preaching if we could on a Sunday. And so we decided, I think, Jeff, last year we went to the country of Belize. Man, it's so wonderful. It's beautiful. It's
Yes.
palm trees and branches swaying and sunshine. And
Got
then
to
we
have
decided
dinner on
this
the
year,
beach one night, and it was so warm and nice. And so this year we decided to come to Detroit. I don't know why we decided that, but it's been a wonderful trip, Dale. We've been able. This is kind of the annual Jenkins Institute planning meeting. Is what we kind of call this, and we made a lot of plans for the coming year. And Dale, one of the things that we've done these few days is something we want to talk a little bit about today.
well, so one project that we started, I don't know, quite some time ago, I believe, really is a project that we put out a couple of books the last few years. And one of the things we wanted to do is, after we started meeting with elders and finding out how much we enjoyed our time with elders and benefited from them, we thought it'd be kind of neat. We have a book out that shows appreciation for elders, but we thought it'd be good to have a book that may have some things that might be useful to elders that we've learned from other elders that we've dealt with through the years, because there is some value in shared experiences, Jeff. So we called it the Top 10 List for Elders.
So a couple of things, Dale, just real quick before we move on too far. You said we've published a few books in the last few years. We actually, probably for the first time, we counted this week while we were together these few days, how many books we published. And what was that number?
Well, it's right at 60. Depending on a couple of whether you count them digital or not digital. And so right around 60 books that we've got out there right now. And when you count the various formats they're in, we're probably over 100 when we talk about audiobooks and different tools like that we have additional things to. So, yeah, we got quite a few books out there that we put out. They're on the Jenkins Institute store, and a lot of them are free.
And Dale, those 60 books, the vast majority of those books are written kind of for preachers, about preaching, to encourage preachers. And so this is a little bit different. Like you said, when we started the Jenkins Institute, we said our primary goal was to encourage preachers, and that remains our primary goal to this day. But we have spent a lot of times in recent years, I don't know if it's because we're getting older or what it is, but we spent a lot of time with elders and working with elders and trying to encourage elders. And so this book is in that vein. Dale, one other thing before we get too far, we want to encourage, if you're watching this, would you share this on your timeline? Maybe it's on our Facebook pages, and maybe you could share this with others. And if you are watching, write us a note there in the comments section. Say hello to us. Let us know that you're here. We've got a number of people who have joined us today, and we're very grateful for that. And also, especially if you know elders, we would encourage you to share this with them and let them know about it as well. So, Dale, we have, I think, I don't know how many top 10 lists are in this book. This book is getting near being ready to send to the printer, I think. And so one of the top 10 lists has to do with elder preacher discussions. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, so as we started working on this, we thought there are a number of conversations, Jeff, at least, that it seems that elders and preachers either don't have because they might be uncomfortable, or for whatever reason, that at some point they come to the front, and if we don't deal with them before, when they come to the front, they're trouble. So we need to deal with them early on. So we started talking about, all right, here's some conversations that elders and ministers ought to have together. And, uncomfortable sometimes, but, to get used to being honest and transparent, it will lead to a healthier relationship if you can have these conversations. And, Jeff, we might talk a moment about what a conversation actually is.
Dale, I think you made a note in the introduction to this chapter about these are not necessarily conversations that need to be had before the preacher is hired, but at some point, and probably the sooner the better after he's hired, these conversations need to take place. And by making that statement, we don't mean that there are not crucial conversations that need to be had before a preacher is hired. We certainly believe that, and we would be glad to share with any elders, what kind of questions should we ask, and we'd do the same for preachers before the hiring of the minister. But these are conversations that probably need to be had early on. And you made the great point just a minute ago that sometimes these are not the most comfortable conversations that need to be had, but they do need to be had. And a conversation, of course, certainly we probably don't have to say this, but this has to be two-way. This can't be one person or one group of people talking to another person or another group of people without response. So there's got to be a two-way conversation, two-way discussion, and there need to be some ground rules that need to be laid down. We're going to be kind to each other. We care. We want to do this because we love each other, because we care about each other. And there may be a preacher watching this who says, "Well, what if my elders don't initiate these conversations? What I do?"
Well, first of all, be aware there is a little bit of the right word may not be incongruence, but a balance of power there, where we understand that elders have authority in the local church, where the minister has authority of the Word of God. The Word of God trumps the local church, but in the local church, the elders have the authority over what happens in that church. And so the preacher sometimes is a little bit hat in hand when it comes to these conversations, but he has to be bold and about it and say, all right, here's some things we need to talk about. And our experience is that if you do that, most elders appreciate talking to someone who is an adult. But sometimes we don't act like adults. We act like we're just children, and we go in as if kind of pitiful and everything. So you have to kind of take the lead in this. So Jeff,
let me say one other thing. Neither one of us have ever served as elders, and we have no authority in churches. Other than, as you said, when we're proclaiming the Word of God, the authority is in the Word of God. And I think it's important for us to know that even when the preacher is preaching the Word of God, that doesn't mean the authority is in him, but the authority is in the Word of God. And so while we've never served as elders, or while we're not elders now, we have certainly had a lot of experiences with elders through our life, and we would strongly encourage any elders who watch this to initiate these conversations and to make sure that they take place.
That's correct. So, Jeff, let's get busy in talking about these. There's 10 of them. We don't want to be here all day. So the first one, Jeff, is the most obvious, but also probably the most uncomfortable, and that is the financial discussion, Jeff.
Yes, and Dale, this is not a discussion about what a preacher's being paid, but about the responsibility that each party has to the other. We are a family, and we've often said that we believe that the most healthy, the strongest churches are when elders and preachers work together as a team. When elders include preachers in the conversations, and so this is more about providing the funds of a laborer needs than about what your the pay is. If we
Yeah.
look at it like pay, this is just about the amount of money that's paid. It becomes more like a business transaction and less like a spiritual matter.
Yeah. The question is, if you're an elder, are we paying you a fair amount? If you're a minister, guys, I'm having a difficult time here. Help me see how I can do better. So you can approach this from either standpoint. For an elder, are you spending in a wise manner? As a minister, here's how I'm spending it. Do you believe this is a wise way for me to spend what I'm making? And it's not really about control. It's about helping each other where you can work better together and work longer together without, I always call it, Jeff, that weight you carry around of how do I handle my money and I have enough.
And Dale, if a preacher's really struggling with this, he would be wise if he's never created a budget for himself and for his family. And if he needs advice from elders, many elders have had financial experience, and some of them have even worked in financial institutions, and they know about budgeting. And so don't be afraid to ask for help. If you need help, don't get yourself in trouble. Don't get yourself into a financial situation where you're going to cause any kind of shame on the church. But be willing to ask if you need to ask.
That's right. Just be willing to talk about it. And it's not easy. And Jeff, is it true? I believe it's true. The younger we are, the more challenging this is. It's really hard when we're young sometimes to be old enough and mature enough to go into these guys, especially if you've not had a lot of training in this. I know I was scared to death as a kid. So go in and say, listen, I want to be the best I can be. I want to do the best I can do in every area of my life. That includes the financial area of my life. I need help. Y'all help me figure out how to do this. Most
All right.
of us appreciate that.
All right. So the second discussion is what we call the tenure discussion. And at some point, this should probably be had. It might not be one of the earlier discussions. It might not be a discussion that's had early on, but at some point, there needs to be, elders need to think about how long they're going to serve as elders, and if they need to step away from that at some point. And of course, the preachers need to do the same thing. Preachers need to say, how long do I need to work with a congregation? We often say, don't outstay your ability to be effective and to make a difference in the life of the church. And so elders need to, need to ask themselves, do I believe this is a role that's a lifetime appointment? Or is there a time when I need to think about stepping away and not continuing in this role?
And Jeff, if this is not put on the table, oftentimes elders just begin to assume that it is lifetime. And a man who's worn out, done, even not spiritual where he should be, doesn't know how to step aside and say, listen, I need to get away from this. We need someone else to serve in this area. And sometimes preachers are so scared that they're not willing to speak about it and to say, hey guys, let's have this conversation. Let's put on the table. Let's all talk about how we want to leave. How do I want to leave? I want to leave good or I want to leave bad? I want to leave good as a preacher, as an elder. And how do I go about doing that? And will some of you in this room talk to me when y'all believe it's time for me to leave? Or are you just going to up and get mad at me and kick me out or fire me if I'm the preacher, or just tell me as an elder I can't serve anymore? What are you going to do? Can we talk about this at a good time rather than at a bad time? Because if you're talking about it at a bad time, it's probably not going to end well.
It seems like the most ideal situation when we think about elders would be that the elders as a group have a relationship that is good enough that if one needs to step away because of inability to serve any longer, because of spiritual issue, that the others could talk to him, they could approach him, they could say as a group, you're important part of this family, and then thinking about having the conversation with preachers. We've known very few people in our life where elders just get up one day and say, okay, we're tired of you. It's time for you to go. But it would be good to have that conversation before that time ever comes.
Yeah. Have the conversation early. And again, even when you move there, say someday I may be here the rest of my life, but odds are I won't be. let's talk now about when it's time for me to leave. How do I do this well? I want to leave well, just like I arrived well. I want to leave us being friends. I want to leave us in a good situation. So, and some elderships have some guidelines. As an elder, if at any point the majority of the other elders think that it's time for me to step down, I'll step aside. That may be difficult to do, but it may be useful to an eldership out there. All right, Jeff, let's move on.
Okay, number 3. I think that's yours, Dale.
Okay, the personal growth discussion. Both sides, both the elders and the ministers, need to talk about not just carpet and when we're going to meet this year around the holidays and what we're going to do about the Smith family that's causing so much trouble. We need to talk about our own spiritual growth. We're spiritual men. The elders were put in that role because, if it's how it should be, because they are the most godly men in that church. They're recognized as spiritual leaders in that church. What are you doing to grow as an elder? And then as a younger man, as a preacher, I need to hear the elders talk about their own spiritual growth. And then the elders need to hear me talk about, what am I doing to grow spiritually? Not what am I doing to put sermons together well, not how many visits I made last week, not if what the numbers are in the church building, but what am I personally doing to grow? The church cannot outgrow the spiritual growth of the leadership. And part of this discussion, Jeff, I believe, involves who is influencing me and who's influencing you. Elders, you need to talk to your preacher about who is influencing you right now. Who are you reading? You can read a lot of people, but there are people you can read that they won't lead you in a healthy way to help the local church. And elders, you need to beware. If your preacher is constantly drinking from a fountain that's a perverted fountain, then he's probably going to end up in trouble. So what's causing you to grow spiritually here?
Yeah, one of the questions would be who are your mentors? Who are you listening to? Who are you talking to? Who are you getting your advice from? All right, Dale, number 4. We're going to run out of time before we finish.
Hey.
Number 4, the deep-seated beliefs discussion. And Dale, this is one that not probably, but it has to be had prior to the hiring of a preacher, prior to a preacher making a decision to go and work with the church. There are some non-negotiables, of course. We think about doctrinal matters, and the preacher has to. There's got to be this discussion between the elders and the preachers about matters of faith, about matters of doctrine, and it needs to be had before, but it doesn't need to be had just before. It needs to be happen periodically. We need to ask ourselves, where are we? Preachers and elders sometimes can change their beliefs. And so it needs to come up again, but it's got to be had before. Basic Bible doctrines that the church, where's the church in this? What does the church believe about this? What does the preacher believe about this? That doctrines that are non-negotiables, as we said.
And Jeff, we're not necessarily even talking here about positions on the issue. We're not talking about the issue. Just if you're working with a church and you don't line up with them on even practical matters that tend to be theological, and how you address them, how you approach them. If you don't line up on them, I'm not saying that everybody has to walk in step with everybody else on every issue, but if the leadership is not on the same page, you got a problem. And so, Jeff, this is a discussion that better happen before you get there.
Well, and Dale, if the elders, if they have strong convictions about an issue, yeah, they better find out what the preacher believes about it before they hire him, because they don't want him standing up someday preaching something that they don't believe. That would cause all kinds of heartache and pain for the life of the church.
All right. So number 5, Jeff, how can I do better discussion? Elders have a vested interest in you being the best you can be. They made a decision to hire you. They're the ones who pay your salary. When you do well, they look good. They grow. The church is healthier. Are you willing to listen to these men who listen to you preach every week, and to help them, to allow them to help you be better at what you do? I know some preachers have such a cavalier attitude of you can't tell me, or they don't know, or they don't understand. And there may be situations where that does exist, but the reality is that they're in a better position than those elders, Jeff, are in a better position than you and I are to know what these guys preach every week and how they preach every week. We have phone conversations with them. These elders listen to you every week. How can I get better at what I do? And you'll find out what they're expecting out of you in the process. And then eventually, preachers, your elders will invite you to help them get better. If you take that guidance from them well, the possibility is that you'll have a chance to speak into their life things that will help them get better.
Well, and that brings us to the sixth thought, and that is the exact converse of this, that elders, why we believe that wise elders will ask, have the what can we do better discussion.
Yeah.
They need to ask a preacher who is trying his best and who is doing his work, what can we do to help you? What can we do to make to bring about more unity? What can we do to make sure that you and your family are doing well, that you're doing well in this work? We believe that wise elders will again initiate those conversations, and they'll have them.
Okay, number 7 or 8 here. I think it's number 8. The what do we tell each other discussion. And by that I mean, preachers, you need to talk to your elders about confidentiality here. There are certain things, guys, that confidentiality wise, if you want me to break it, I need to know before I start working here. If I have to tell you every time someone comes into my office and confesses a sin, every time somebody tells me they're struggling with something in their life, if I can't keep that confidentiality, then I need to know that in advance. And if I can keep it, I need to know that in advance. So while respecting the great spiritual responsibility the elders have to shepherd, if somebody comes in your office and tells you certain things, if you tell those things, you can be sued. Now, there are worse things on earth than being sued. Being lost to be worse than that. So it might be that you as a preacher still feel like, I need to tell my elders this, or maybe I need to work around it and talk to the person about how you're going to help, how you're going to help them tell the elders. But that confidentiality discussion needs to happen before it comes to a head and you're both sitting there angry with each other because they didn't tell you or you didn't tell them or that conversation wasn't had and now we've got an issue.
All right, Dale, I think that was number 7. Number 8 is kind of an extension of that is the discussion about how we're going to treat complaints about each other. So some of the things you just talked about, they will come up at some point in the life of the church. There will be people who will come to an elder or the elders and complain about something about the preacher, and there will be times that people will come to the preacher and complain about the elders. And so there should be a discussion about how we're going to handle that. What are we going to do? Do we as elders believe that, ask the question, do we believe the criticism is valid? And if yes, the elders present it as a concern that they have, not as somebody else said. That seems to me to be not a wise way to approach that. Not somebody else has said this about you, not we've heard this about you, but this is a concern that we want to talk about with you.
Yeah, and there are going, as you said, there are going to be criticisms. It doesn't matter who the preacher is. There will be people who be critical, and you need to know how it's going to be handled, and it should be discussed pretty early on. Jeff, number 9, the how is your family discussion. Our friend Jerry Barber talks about how that should be asked in elders meetings. But there is a degree to which you're an elder because you have a family. And oftentimes you're a preacher in that congregation because you had a family. That was one of the things they want. I want a guy that's married. I want a guy that has kids. So you need to talk to each other about family relations because everything is not always good in our family. Everything is not always wonderful. Sometimes we go through struggles. And those are the people that should help you if things are healthy through those struggles, helping each other.
And Dale, by the way, if you're an elder and you don't receive Jerry Barber's emails and his information about leadership, you need to to run, not walk to your computer, and sign up for that. Jerry Barber's emails about leadership and about elders. They're a great resource for elders, and we think that every elder ought to read these. And Dale, that brings us to the last one today, and that is the will you stay current with me discussion. Are we going to have regular communication? Are we going to talk about what's going on in the life of the church? Will elders share with the preacher? Dale, we've heard horror stories about preachers who learn about something that is crucial in the life of the church when the announcement is made, and they didn't even know. I've heard of preachers who learned about an associate minister being hired, and they heard it in an announcement that was made by the elders. And a preacher said, I heard a preacher say this years ago, and I believe this is so crucial. He made the statement that oftentimes the elders want the preacher to be like the quarterback on the team, but sometimes they don't even let him in the huddle. And so elders have got to allow the preacher to hear things that are going on, to know about the decisions that they make. Now, of course, there are decisions that elders will need to make in private that they will not be able to share with the preacher at the time. But we're talking about just generally the life of the church, the everyday working of the church, the programs, the ministries, the people. If a preacher is going to be the spokesman, oftentimes, if he is going to help the elders, he's got to know. So we've got to have that discussion as well.
And let's be honest about it. Those matters that are so confidential are pretty few and far between. If we're honest about it, they don't happen every single day. Jeff, the other side of this that I want to mention real quickly is don't wait till December and my annual review to bring up 25 things that I've made mistakes on this year. Stay current with me through the year as well. Not only keep me posted on what's going on in the life of a church, but don't bring me in for my annual review and suddenly spring something on me in December that happened back in February and you didn't talk to me because, well, I got a review coming up in December. Kind of stay current with me. If there's an issue, let's deal with it. Marriages don't work well, but could you imagine a marriage having an annual meeting where once a year you got together and you discuss your problems in your marriage and you couldn't talk about them any other time and you just kind of kept them in your mind, and I've got this long list of stuff. Wouldn't work very well, and it doesn't work very well in the leadership situation.
So communication is the key. Have regular meetings, allow the preacher to be involved, tell him things that he needs to know. If you have issues with him, you need to talk to him about that. Those are so crucial. So Dale, certainly we don't believe that these are all the conversations that preachers and elders need to have, but these are starters, and we strongly encourage elders to take the leadership, to take the initiative in this. But if they don't, we would encourage preachers to have conversations with the elders about these, and we believe it'll make the church more healthy. It'll make the relationship between preachers and elders stronger. It'll make things run more smoothly. It'll make things more beautiful, and everybody will be happier for it.
All right, so 10 conversations. Jeff, great to be with you. Hope everybody has a great week.
All right, thank you for joining us today, and now may the Lord bless you and keep you is our prayer for you.